Today we're talking about divine order, natural law unfolding. I thought that was a good combination because I remember when I used to affirm divine order in the very beginning, when I began reading this kind of thing, I would think that to affirm divine order means you're kicking the law into action. But it's more of a recognition that the law is occurring all the time. And so that helped make the transition, and that's what we'll talk about today. To speak of divine order is to speak of the intelligence that governs all life, from the orbit of the planets to the growth of a seed. There's a quiet precision at work in the universe as unseen harmony that sustains and directs the whole. And when I was doing more photography, and I'm still doing it, I'm not doing it like I was, but one thing that captured my attention was the leaf of a grape and the veins in it. This is not one of my pictures, but I got several like it. But when you use a camera very much, you start paying attention to things. And when you start studying a leaf, a grape leaf, it's a phenomenal thing. It's an amazing thing. How does that work? How did that come about? And you see there's an intelligence working through it that knows how to take care of not only the leaf you're photographing, but every other leaf on the vine. And we don't even have that many grapes in this area. There's a lot of grape leaves. Something's taking care of them all. Something's working through them all. So you get this sense that you're looking at a piece of the universe, just a small piece, and what happens in the grape leaf happens every place. It happens in the grass, it happens in the bird that flies over, it happens everywhere. There's this order that is taking place, and it's connected to intelligence. That's why we focus so much on the idea of God as intelligence. And that's different than saying God is intelligent. Like we might say of a person, they're very intelligent, or my dog is extremely intelligent. Most intelligent dog on the planet. That's how a lot of people think. And cats or whatever, whatever pet you have. The more you observe them, the more you see this order and intelligence that's involved every place. But that life that we see, that intelligence we see, it's what we don't see. It's that connecting link that we don't see that's everywhere. So when we talk about divine order and intelligence as omnipresent, that's kind of a concept that we hold. We don't really grasp what that means, but how would the intelligence that works through me, that pumps the blood through my veins, how would it know how to do a grape leaf also? But it's connected. And I think that's why we are drawn to animals and plants and different things. We feel that connection with them, but it's, being omnipresent, we can't see it. But we see it with the mind's eye. We see it through our intuitive side. And it's a very strong draw. But that's one thing I appreciate about how often do you take time to just look at a grape leaf? And I don't do it very often, but when I have a camera, I will. And I'll try to get several good shots with it, under different conditions. And then on top of that, different seasons. Because in the beginning, the grape leaves are all green, and then pretty soon they start turning brown. Normally you'd think, well, that thing's dying, but when you have a camera, it becomes a beautiful expression. The color that comes into it and everything that you don't normally see, you see it when you are thinking about it, when you're focused. So that's kind of what we're looking at, the idea of divine order. It's not something that just starts when you pick up the camera, or when you start paying attention. It's going on all the time. The same intelligence is present within us. When Jesus spoke of the way, he was pointing to this living current of order, what Taoist philosophy calls the Tao, the natural rhythm of the universe moving through every form and circumstance. It occurred to me one time that as I have done I don't delve too deeply into these other religions and all, but I find them fascinating, especially the things that stand out that are universal. And this idea that early Christians were called followers of the way, and the Taoists, they call it the way. And you ask one of them to explain, what do you mean by that? And they really can't tell you what it means, but it's the creative movement of the universe. And I think that's what Jesus was talking about when he would refer to the lilies of the field and the birds of the air, and how your Heavenly Father takes care of them. The Heavenly Father is that invisible something or other that makes all this stuff happen. And it's happening in us, not just when we acknowledge it. But our acknowledgement helps us trust it, helps put us in touch with this idea. Like if you're going through a struggle of some kind and you just stop and say, my life is now unfolding in divine order, you don't have to work so hard to control it. You don't have to work so hard to make sure that the thing you want to have happen happens. That's we sometimes think of order as something we must impose upon chaos. Yet spiritual order does not begin with control. It begins with recognition. And it doesn't begin, we observe it in action, let's put it that way. We begin to observe it. We begin to trust that it's happening. And the reason I picked this particular image is just the idea of shaping something, making something look like you want it to look. There's a place for that. We want that to happen. I told you last week that's what I did with my book. I shaped it into something that I wanted. But what's interesting about that is the end result did not look like the beginning vision. So the shaping occurs in the process. It occurs while you are trusting the process and moving forward and adding to and taking away from and changing your thinking if necessary. But the whole thing is an orderly process. There's an order that's involved in it. And so you're going through something that you feel like you're out of control. It is, and to say that my life is now in divine order, it helps remind you to rest. That grape leaf is not something you did. You're going to observe it. You're going to photograph it. You're going to see what has happened naturally. And so you're not responsible for that thing. You're maybe responsible for getting a good picture, if that's what you're after. But that's not going to change anything whether you get one or not. In fact, that kind of thing can make photography stressful. This picture is not as good as somebody else's. I was doing pictures of osprey catching fish, over at Corn Lake, which was a lot of fun. But I'm glad I did not have to pay for film development on that, because I would set my camera up where you hold the button down and it's like a machine gun, it just shoots 10 or 12 frames a second. It's pretty fast. And so you go home and sort through all that and see if you got a good one, and you do that 15, 20 times in one morning and you've got a lot of pictures to sort through. So I got a few good ones. But then I would go online and look up ospreys, and there'd be one that was just so much better than anything I spent all morning trying to get. So that can work against you, and so what's the point? Does that mean I'll never go out and do that again because there's just no way I'm going to get that good of a picture? If that's what you're after, you probably won't, and you might as well give it up. But if you like the process, if you enjoy the being out there and trying to get a better shot, and you never know when that $1 million shot will come up. It could be the very next one. But it can work against you if you are thinking your life is not in order, that you're not living up to some standard. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you're already in divine order. You're already in it. And so you don't need to affirm it except to remind yourself that you're already in it. So you go home with 1,000 pictures, none of them you like, your life is still in divine order. It has nothing to do with, what's happening in the universe. Divine order is not created by our effort, but revealed through our awareness. We do not establish it, we acknowledge it. Same idea. So that's what changed in my thinking when I started hearing this phrase, affirm your life is in divine order. It's like, okay, I'll start doing that, so now my life is in divine order. I wasn't affirming it 5 minutes ago, so divine order didn't start until now, but now it's going. Well, what if you find that the problem you're having is part of the order? It's part of the process, part of uncovering something you may not have seen before. That I don't know how that always works, and I'm not sure that it always does. It seems like it makes perfect sense that every step I've taken has brought me to this place. So I've taken some steps I didn't think were right, but what if I hadn't taken them? What if I hadn't? Maybe I wouldn't be here. I don't know. We can't tell on something like that, but what we do is we relax in that thought that my life is in divine order, no matter how it looks, going on the outside right now. I'm not invoking divine order, I'm acknowledging that my life is in divine order now. And what that does, it brings a sense of peace and everything's okay. I don't have to fight this battle. It's not mine. It's unfolding exactly as it should. That doesn't always feel to be the case, but it is. And again, what I always find, if I go down into some negative valley, I always come out. And it can be the next 5 minutes, it could be the next 5 days. That takes that long to come out sometimes. But so far I've always come out, and I think we'll all do that. We go down in the valley and we come out. And it's just part of how the whole mind thing works. And it's funny because it's our perception, the perceptual valleys and our perceptual peaks. When our minds are anxious or divided, life appears fragmented. The conditions of our experience resonate with the condition of our consciousness. Okay, that doesn't mean that the condition of your life resonates with your consciousness. It means the condition of your experience. You remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the difference between the event and the experience. The experience is that inner thing. I feel shattered sometimes. I feel like life is out of control. So to affirm divine order is to remember the truth, that nothing's off track. Let your perception come back, reel it back in. Whatever's going on here, it'll pass, or you'll see it differently, or you'll see that it's actually working on your behalf. And that's, again, when you get emotionally into something, it's very hard to pull your emotions out. That's why I keep saying you're not going to mess it up. You're not going to mess your life up. You're going to be, your future, probably you're going to experience more, a level of negativity you didn't think was possible. I would predict that for all of us. There's going to come a time, a moment, a day, whatever, it's going to show up, and you're going to have one of the worst days you've ever had, one of the worst moments you've ever had. How's that for good affirmations? Well, you can deny it. You can pretend like it's not going to happen. But here's the point I'm trying to make is, so what? So it happens. If you ended up saying, that was the worst experience I've ever had in my life, then you can say, thank God I'm done. It's over. If that's the worst one I'm ever going to have, I survived it. Well, you've had one of those. You've had many of those, actually, but there's one that's probably the very worst that you've ever had. And here you are, listening to a guy talk about it. You know, you made it. You survived that. So if that happens, and I'm not, projecting anything, I'm just saying that's what happens in life sometimes. You do not expect it. You show up, you're on your back, struggling with something. Totally unexpected. So let's don't visualize that, and let's don't even expect it. Let's just say that if it happens, it's not going to destroy you. You'll be fine. You'll get through it. You'll move through it because your life is in divine order. You're going to move through it. So what I used to think is if I was knocked backwards, that I was losing. I needed to work harder. I needed to practice more. I needed to read more books. Needed to put more affirmations on my refrigerator or on my medicine cabinet. I needed to do something different than I was doing. Otherwise, why would this be happening? I thought I was going to be walking on water by now, and I'm sinking up to my neck. So what's that all about? And that's the idea of control. I'm going to learn enough truth to control my life, or I'll never go through another negative experience. So if any of you achieve that, I will trade you places. You're going to come up here, and I will sit out there and listen to you tell me how you did it, because I've never met anybody that has done it. And I've met some I have considered pretty enlightened people that have done pretty well on the spiritual path, and they've had huge audiences, and they've had big followings. But I have seen them as negative as I've ever been in some of their darker moments. And that I considered a privilege, to be able to see this person I held up on a pedestal actually is a human being and has human emotions and has human reactions. And so it's not a sign of loss. It's not a sign of not being good enough or spiritually educated enough. But there's nothing wrong with continue the reading, continue the affirmations, all that stuff. But I like what I remember James Della Freeman said something to our ministerial class one time. He said, "You don't affirm something to make it true. You affirm it because it is true." And that's what we're doing. My life is in divine order. I'm just saying something that's true. And when I truly grasp that, when I understand emotionally what that means I can stop fighting. I can stop fighting against this. Doesn't mean that I won't take action, that if action is required or whatever might be required, because often it is. But it's not the action that bothers us. As I have said, it's worry is we worry about those things we can do nothing about. So when we're worrying, we're doing something about it. It's like we're worrying, but it's not changing anything except ourselves. And what's it doing? What does worry do to us? I don't have to tell any of you that. We all know it degrades the quality of our life, degrades the quality of our experience. We all know that. When I say my life is in divine order and I don't try to make that true, but realize it is true, that upgrades the quality of experience I'm having. It allows me to release, trust, and know that it really is working in a way that's for my highest good. So it's, to me, that's a lot simpler than saying my life is in divine order than looking for changes, looking for things to show up differently. Because I made that affirmation. I started that process. I'm going with it. I'm moving with the way, flowing with the flow, going with the flow, as we say, going with let go and let God kind of thing. If we're fearful, we perceive disorder. If we are centered, we perceive the unfolding of divine intelligence. The same universe meets us in both cases, but the state of our inner lens determines what we see. So this is really true. The same universe meets us if we're worried or if we're relaxed. It's the same universe. We're in the same place, but we are having we're seeing it through a different lens. We're seeing it through through different perception. And that's the experience. That's the experience we're having. It's not what's going on out there, it's what's going on in here. This is all very old news to us, to all of us here. But how many of you found yourselves getting sucked into some appearance this week? Maybe this day. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We all do it. We're not taking grades, and I don't even necessarily think you have to raise your hand. I already know you've done it. If you don't raise your hand, you're lying. That's the way I look at it. We're human. We're on this human plane, and we all get sucked into it. Now, maybe you have risen above that. Again, I'll trade you places. Because I don't know how to do it all the time. I know the principles. I've talked about them for 40 years. I know them quite well. But the real test is when you're walking through your life and you encounter something that brings all the stuff you don't like up. Nobody had that happen this week, right? What is that? So, again, I used to think when that happened, that meant I was not evolved enough. I did not know enough about truth. Well, I know enough about truth, but it's those moments that trigger those kinds of reactions that bring it out. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Our consciousness is full of garbage. It's got a lot of good stuff and it's got a lot of bad stuff. So I think we're going to shed all the bad stuff eventually, but as long as we have a body, for some reason those two things go together. We'll hold on to it. And the reason is because the soul is so dumbed down by the body that we fall into a lesser place. You know, it's more survival mode a lot of times. And it's personalities, it's not being able to read people correctly and all. If you have two souls, no bodies, there's perfect communication, no place for misunderstanding. But it's when the body's introduced, it's a different world. And it's where we're at. So don't worry about your soul. You know, that's what I think Jesus did not focus a lot on the afterlife. He said, you're in the problem zone right now. You've got a body. You know, when you lose the body, you'll be okay. But we're here. We made a choice to be here, to have this experience for some reason. Let's make the most of it. Let's get through this in a way that works, that we feel good about. So that's what we want to focus on, is not what happens when we lose this thing, because I think it's going to be good. I think we're learning from the near-death research that death is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. The mystery is why we would choose to step into this vehicle, have this experience, and I think that it's very important for us to contemplate that. Why would I do that? There's some reason I did it. Did I forget? Have I forgotten? I have forgotten. But it doesn't mean there's a specific thing necessarily, because it could be like a canoe trip down the river. I just want to do it. You know, I'm going to encounter rapids. I'm going to encounter calm water. You know how Google sends you pictures. Here's what you're doing last year or whatever. I got one this morning I did a solo trip from Corn Lake to Fruita, out in Fruita somewhere on the Colorado, in a 2 pontoon riverboat that we used to have. And Beth took the picture and it just brought up all that memory. But what is a river trip? You know, it's like life. Sometimes you get in water that is so still, you've got to paddle, and it's work. Other times you get in water that's so fast, you want to jump off. You know, and other times you get in water that's just right, the Goldilocks zone. It's perfect. And that's kind of what draws you back, you know, unless you're into the rapids thing. But why do we do stuff like that? You know, you don't have to put yourself into that kind of position. Why do you do it? Because I wanted to, And so I think it's the same thing with this earth body experience. Why would you jump into something where you're going to, first you show up in diapers, who wants to do that? And you go out in diapers, who wants to do that? So you do everything in between. So why would you want to do that? Well, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to do it. So there may not have to be a reason, it's just an experience to have. And it's, make peace with that. I'm on this river, I may not like these rapids, but I'm on it, and I'll get through the rapids, and I'll come out on the other end, and I'll be a stronger person as the result. To live in harmony with divine order is to trust the larger pattern, even when appearances suggest confusion. Jesus demonstrated this trust repeatedly, whether facing hunger, illness, or the turbulence of human emotion. He responded from an inner alignment with the law of spirit, the natural law of perfect balance and renewal. His life was an example of cooperation with the way, not resistance to it. And from a historical point of view, I'm not sure that's exactly true, but what Jesus is he's presented to us as an example. With the feeding of the 5,000, for example, I don't know that historically happened. But the whole idea is that's an impossible situation, but there is a solution. So you can apply that in your impossible situation. You may not be having 5,000 dinner guests today, but you may be in something that looks just about as formidable, and that you don't know how to get through it, like the disciples. Let's send them home. Let's get them out of here. And he says, no, we don't have to do that. There's another way. So however you look at that so-called miracle, it's the principle behind it that we want to look at. That's the real value of it. Because I doubt if too many of us are going to feed 5,000 people, walk across the lake, or do whatever, raise somebody from the dead. You might, I don't know, but that's not the point of any of these things. The point is what's behind that. You look at an impossible situation, instead of saying no, I can't, you say, well, how can I? That's the whole value of, I think, all of the miracle stories. That's what I write about in the book. I don't go down that road anymore. I don't need a miracle working, water walking Messiah to get something out of the stories, to get something out of his life, an example. It's just not necessary. When an area of life feels out of control, we can pause and remember divine order is not absent. It is waiting to be acknowledged. In prayer, in stillness, in the simple act of breathing deeply, we align ourselves with the steady rhythm of universal intelligence. So let's kind of do that. Affirm quietly, divine order is now established here. The natural law of perfect order is now unfolding. Let's say that together. Divine order is now established here. The natural law of perfect order is now unfolding. Let's do that again. Divine order is now established here. The natural law of perfect order is now unfolding. Believe it? It's true. As we rest in that awareness, outer conditions begin to mirror the peace of inner knowing. What once felt chaotic reveals itself as life reorganizing around truth. The way has never ceased moving. We are simply learning again to walk with it. I like that. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and and have a wonderful week.